are focusing on Active Directory. So you get your initial foothold into the environment. Maybe this is a interpreter session that you got from phishing. Maybe this is Beacon if you use Cobalt Strike. Maybe you started off with Layer 2 access and you use Responder to get your initial privilege on a machine somewhere in the environment. Now, thanks to some work by Will Schroeder, you can use PowerShell and PowerView to collect information about the environment that you're in. So all of these like dotted boxes, these are going to represent systems that we know exist in the environment, but we don't have any kind of privilege to yet. Additionally, we can find out where a domain admin user is logged on. You don't need administrative rights to find this information. Who, like by a show of hands, who does this all the time? Like on your assessment, you're using like Invoke User Hunter, you're using Git Nest Session. You're finding out where the target is in the environment, what box you need to land on, and run Mimikatz and steal their credential. All right, now, in this kind of like, maybe a little less mature type environment, let's say you're able to escalate your rights locally on the system. You run hashdump, you collect the NTLM hashes for the local users, including the RID 500 user. And maybe they've applied KB 2871997, the pass the hash killer but not really pass the hash killer patch. Or maybe they haven't. Bottom line is, you escalate rights on this one machine, and then you gain kind of notional administrator privileges to everything in the environment. So did that click work? Okay, there we go. Cool. So the solid blue lines on these computers are going to represent systems that we now have the ability to pivot to. And lo and behold, who should appear but the domain admin on this system that we can pivot to? So we pivot over to that machine. We run Mimikatz, we collect that domain admin's password in clear text, and we win. We're awesome, we're pen testers, we're elite hacksaws. We give the report to the client, and they think that we're the most amazing person on the planet, right? Who's done an assessment where the escalation path looked almost exactly like that? A lot of you, awesome. So let's take a look at a slightly different environment. So again, we get our initial access through Beacon, Interpreter, Responder, whatever. You got your initial access, and again, you can figure out where the domain admin is logged in on the environment. However, this environment actually does have fairly mature patch management, vulnerability management processes. So you can't find MSO 8067, you can't find Tomcat, you can't find JBoss. KitcherPod has been gone for a decade, right? So let's hit next. Let's say that eventually we do find some kind of privilege. I would say that 9 times out of 10, the way that we on our operations usually get our initial foothold into an environment are clear text credentials that are left over in open file shares. And what I mean by open file shares are shares that any user who is authenticated to Active Directory has the ability to read. So what does that most commonly mean? Like GPP, login scripts, etc. We find this all the time. So let's say in this situation we found that as well. At this point, we need to make a choice. We need to make our best educated guess on what system is the best to pivot to. We see these 3 users in these systems that we can pivot to, but we know that none of them are a domain admin. And we also know that none of them have local administrator rights on that system that the DA was logged on in the first place. So essentially, we have to guess, or you can go through the analysis, which is a royal pain. So let's say we make a choice. We decide we're going to pivot to this guy's box. Next, we find out what systems does this new user that we have the ability to impersonate have access to. And we find out that our scope of administrator privileges in the environment is starting to grow very slowly. Now we need to make another choice. We can either say, all right, well, I have these 2 other boxes in this first stage that I could pivot to, so do I want to go there, or do I want to go to one of these new boxes that I have privilege on? Let's say I choose to go to this one in the top right. I see that maybe there's something in his user account properties that indicates like maybe he has some kind of privilege, like he's a SQL admin, or he's he's a patch management type admin, something like that, a WSUS admin. Now, we pivot to that guy's system. We figure out what admin rights does this new user have in the environment, and we find out there's nothing new. we are still where we were. And so we're going through this kind of credential dance, this kind of credential shuffle where we have to go to this box, get the password, find out what we have admin rights to. And if we fail like we did just now, we have to go a step back, and it sucks, and you get really upset, and you reset, and you make another guess. And so this time we guess. Let's go to this guy over here. And then we find out what admin rights this new user has. So lo and behold, what should appear? But this new user that we just popped has admin rights on the system where the DA was logged on. Awesome. So what does that give us? That gives us access to the domain admin account, which now we have access to the entire environment. So this kind of like credential shuffle, or what Microsoft refers to as an identity snowball attack, by a show of hands, who has executed